Freud developed his concept of id-ego and superego, he looked at it from the perspective that the id, of course, was the impulsive, but that the superego was the section of our personality that puts the brakes on. The brakes on the id and the ego, and the ego has the job of keeping these two at balance instead of continuing to war. The point is, if you're a really impulsive person, then Freud would say you have a stronger id, and if you're really a strict person who follows the rules all the time and doesn't ever give yourself the pleasure of buying things, then you would have a very strong superego, and that if you were balanced across the three, then of course you would have a very good ego. Freud also believed that everything came down to sex, which he saw as a biological need. Of course, it's not on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but in Freud's case, he said we are driven by our sexuality. There are plenty of other personality theorists out there. You can look them all up, people like Jung and all these others, but I think first and foremost you have to decide if personality is real or if it's just a convenient term to describe our behavior, right? He has a deviant personality. Maybe it's not that a person has a deviant personality, but that's their behavior. Their behavior is deviant. So when you look at personality in relationship to buying behavior, first you have to determine whether or not you think it's a reality. And if you do, then if you take the Freud approach or the Jung approach or one of these approaches, you can use it to drive consumers to buy. Today, companies are using personality tests to determine what your personality type is, and then utilize that to see how you'll perform in the job functions that you're in. So, for example, it would be hard to hire a salesperson who was an introvert. It would be more likely that you would hire a salesperson who would come out as an extrovert. The belief is that you can't hide your true personality from these tests, and so they usually give them to you. Over this page and the next page, you'll see the breakdown of the different types of personalities you can come out with on the Myers-Briggs test, and this is just a little breakdown to give you. This is a really interesting topic around buyer behavior, and it looks at belief, affect, and buying. And what it does is it kind of rotates these around and says sometimes we buy first, and then we develop a belief about it, and finally we get a feeling about it. Sometimes we have a feeling, we develop a belief, and we buy, and other times we have a belief, it leads us to a feeling, and then we buy. So the way we look at belief, affect, and buy is we evaluate the options. Do we first develop the belief? Do we first develop the feeling or emotional response? Or do we make a buy first and then have the rest of these happen? So let's take a look at the hierarchy of what's called effects. Look at the hierarchy effects of purchasing. First, if it's a high involvement piece, something that involves a lot of work on your behalf, you will probably first develop a belief and then an emotional response, and then the behavior will happen, or what we would consider to be the buy. Or no, not buying. If it's a low involvement piece, picking up milk and bread at the end of the day, you have a belief, you act on the belief, and then you develop an emotional response to it. If it's experiential, you'll have an emotional response, make the buy, and then have the belief. And if it's behavioral, you'll have the behavior, which means you'll buy first, and then you'll develop a belief about that product, and then have an affect. So as you can see, there are different ways that you can approach the hierarchy of effects. But the real key here to hierarchy of effects is that it depends on how much involvement there is in the piece. And it depends, too, on how, if there's an emotional response that develops as a result of it. Now let's look at attitude, the ABCs of attitude. There are three primary, and they are affect, which we've already discussed, which is the emotional response, behavior, which in the case of, for the purposes of our demonstration, is the buy, and then last is cognition, or the thought process. To me, this is exactly the same as the hierarchy of effects, right? Belief, affect, and behavior. So this is an easy way to remember it. And remember, these can go in any direction, right? So it could be that we think about it first and then we get an emotional response and we buy. It could be we buy first and then we think about it and get an emotional response. So to me, these are exactly the same as the hierarchy of effects. So when we look at lifestyles, we look at opinions, attitudes, and activities. These are the things that bind a particular lifestyle together. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to look at lifestyles, but then I'm going to share with you the approach that marketers take. Obviously, we can't look at every lifestyle. It just wouldn't be reasonable. But there is a way of dividing up lifestyles based on these opinions, attitudes, and activities that work for marketers. As I mentioned, there are many ways to look at lifestyles, but one is this chart that you see here: actualizers, achievers, strivers, experiencers, makers, and strugglers. And you can see that the list is pretty easily defined across products. So an actualizer will enjoy the finer things in life, and they'll be receptive to new products and technologies, but they are skeptical of the way advertising sits. Achievers are attracted to premium products, and then strivers are image conscious, so the types of products that you would sell to them would be the ones that would be image based, and then experiencers follow trends and fashion and fads, and then makers shop for comfort, durability, and strugglers are brand loyal. They use coupons and watch for sales. So this is one way to look at lifestyles. And it's one of the ways that marketers can use to look at lifestyles. But this is very hard to judge when you're trying to figure out who in your demographics is the right lifestyle. This is easy once you're already established in doing business with these people, but not so easy when you're first starting. So let's look at another way to look at lifestyles. Marketers have a view of lifestyles as well. And we can tell a lot about a person by their interests and opinions, of course, but also by their behavior. So the way we look at lifestyles is to say they're an active or athletic person. Obviously, there are certain products that are geared directly towards athletic or active people, artistic or creative, relaxed or spontaneous. There are certain products that are perfect for each of these personalities. For example, the athletic or the active, maybe a mountain bike or Nike products would be perfect for the athletic or active. For the artistic or creative, we can see in Sharpie's advertisements that they've been advertising towards the artistic and creative side of people to get past just being a business-to-business marker. For the relaxed crowd, you might have gardening and so on and so forth. And then for the spontaneous, you would have products like the GoPro or last-minute tickets or last-minute cruises, or, there's plenty of products that fall into that range as well. And these are easier for us to identify in our target audience. We can use the characteristics of other people who are similar in these personalities to target or find the people in our target audience who match them. And then once we figure that out, we can start marketing the right products to them based on this particular lifestyle. And that's how marketers use lifestyle. They use lifestyle by finding the people within their target audience and then driving to those parts of their personality. GoPro is an example of a product and company that definitely drives to a lifestyle. In the case of GoPro, they drive to that spontaneous lifestyle. And all of their flat ads, or print ads as we would call them, and all of their YouTube ads and everything else that they do drives directly towards a lifestyle. So companies can use lifestyle to get what they want. And I'm sure you can think of a lot of companies that do that. I'm going to show you a couple more, and you'll get the picture of how people use lifestyle to change people's opinions. It is another company that utilizes selling to a lifestyle. And they don't just sell to the lifestyle that people have, they sell to an intended lifestyle. Not everybody that is active and fit is somebody who's currently active and fit. Sometimes it's people who are intending to be active and fit. And they can be sold the Fitbit as well. And as you can see from the advertisement, almost all of the pictures and images are of people who are engaged in athletic or active types of events. So lifestyle can be used by companies. There's very specific companies that can use these lifestyles to drive towards both a current lifestyle or an intended lifestyle to sell their products. Another approach to lifestyle is one that some companies take, and it's to look at the kind of lifestyle a person leads regarding where they live. So you could have big city urban or small city urban, small towns, suburbs, or rural. And perhaps you could use this in some manner to sell certain products. This is not what a marketer uses, but this can be a designator of different types of lifestyle. And that's the challenge with lifestyle. With lifestyle, it's not specifically one set of parameters that people use or another. As you've seen, these are three very different approaches to lifestyle. Marketers, however, they don't look at all of these. They're really specific about the ones that they look at. And that, again, goes back to the creative, artistic, active, athletic, the spontaneous, and the person who just wants to relax and have a relaxed lifestyle. We have two lifestyles, just as we have two self-images. We have the lifestyle that we currently have and the lifestyle that we intended or want to have. And marketers can use that intended lifestyle to get us to buy products. They can set the frame, buy my product and you'll be active or you'll be considered athletic. So an example of this that I wanted to give you were children's ads are almost always older than the actual child that would be using the product. Why? Because when we're a child, we want to be considered older. So you would, for example, be advertising to a 12-year-old girl using a 14 or 15-year-old girl in the advertisement. And that's because that's who they aspire to have a lifestyle like. Last but far from least when it comes to how and why we buy is risk. Buying is definitely tied to risk. We have what we call loss aversion. And what that means is that we feel loss twice as much as we feel gain. So, for example, in the book, you've probably seen the story about the lottery tickets. If you gave somebody 2 lottery tickets that were both $1 winners, they had nothing to start with, and you gave them 2 lottery tickets, and you took one away and gave it to somebody else, versus you just gave them a $1 lottery ticket. They would prefer the just $1 lottery ticket than to the 2 that you take away and give to somebody else. And the reason for that is because in the 2 and then you take 1 away, we feel the loss twice as much as we actually felt the gain of the $1. So this is a really important concept for marketers to understand. It is part of our psyche that we feel loss more than we feel gain. And how you frame the buy, how you frame your product is very important in buyer behavior. It can make the product seem like it's less of a loss aversion and more of a gain, and it can eliminate that concept of risk. We don't like to feel risk. We are more heavily involved anytime we do feel risk, and we are less likely to buy. The percentages go down significantly when there's a lot of risk involved in a purchase. And that's the end of the slide deck on lifestyle, personality, and affect. But there are 3 very important qualities that marketers can use to help frame their purchases and get people to buy.